Hi, so this is just a life review. So basically, um, I was born with a kind of crap IQ, pretty low, and I was put in remedial English in primary school and then in remedial English in secondary school. I also scored in the bottom 30th percentile in national IQ tests when I was 17. So I did manage to get into university where I did English, ironically enough, and yeah, I got firsts for every year I was there, barely first, I might add, and I worked my ass off to get those results. I don't think they were deserved though, but basically, I did a master's degree after that in digital visual effects, but I couldn't get a job because I wasn't good compared to my peers and I was a slow learner. And in between all that, I wanted to be a musician, but my music was crap. There's other people who write much better music than I could ever do that, so that never took off. And then I decided to go back into academia. I wanted to do an English PhD because I thought, well, if I was doing okay with English in my bachelor's of arts, maybe that's the path that I should take. Well, that was the wrong path to take because I couldn't get a job in academia either because I invested in that PhD, not academia, not universities, not through funds. You know what I mean? So basically, they had no investment in me, and that was manifested or that transpired through me not getting employment post PhD. People would say that was an idiotic decision, and I'm inclined to agree. However, I literally couldn't get employment or fit in anywhere else either. So like this was an ambition and a dream, and also something I felt like I had to do because I couldn't. I just don't have the mind for corporate work. So, anyways, I did TEFL teaching for a lot to fund these kind of ventures, but also I did TEFL teaching afterwards, and you know I got let go from my job because the students were complaining about me after 3 years, saying I was crap, and then in and around that time, I thought maybe I should do teacher training in the UK and become a proper teacher, like learn all the kind of skills needed to be the best teacher I can be. But then COVID happened, so I put it off for 2 years because I didn't want to get COVID in a classroom. But then once that was over, I started applying for PGCEs, and every year that I would do it, I would put it off for another year, withdraw from the course because I would get crippling anxiety attacks in the summer based on two things: my fear of failure and my fear of social rejection. And that was kind of stemming from the fact that I would lose jobs after a period of time because people would say that I wasn't performing well enough in them, right? So basically, eventually in 2025 I conquered that fear, but I use conquered in quotes because I really didn't. Basically, I did go and start a PGCE teacher training, and my first placement was a nightmare. I was disorganized apparently. Well, yeah, I was disorganized, and also I wasn't an effective teacher, and I barely passed by the skin of my teeth. Um, and then the second placement, it just got terminated last week because I got frustrated. And by frustrated, I was just a bit monosyllabic with my mentor. And the reason I was monosyllabic with my mentor was because they weren't supporting me in the placement insofar as there were no mentor meetings. And they were saying one thing and doing the other. So there was no transparency. I was having my timetable reduced, but they weren't telling me about that. But it was because I wasn't a good enough teacher. So they're cutting the classes that I would use to train in back such that I wasn't able to refine my practice as such. Um, but essentially, they didn't like me either. That I think that's another reason. But basically, I had like screenshots of the emails, the correspondences I had with them, which were all kind of polite and positive. But um, their review of me was wholly negative after the fact. Um, and they never gave me any warning that they were going to terminate me. And normally there's a kind of escalation process involved. So you get like a warning, you get a cause for concern, and then you get terminated. I didn't get that. I was just terminated within less than a day. So that's where I stand now. So I can go back and do a third placement in September. But I think this life review is basically that I am a dismal failure. Um, I have tried and tried and tried, and I've come up with nothing to show for it. And they say like confront your worst fears. Well, I did, and it turned out my fears were completely valid. They were completely correct, and so they characterized me. They informed me. I confronted my fears, and I failed. It's like Paul Atreides putting his hand in the box, but when he withdraws his hand, there's only bones, not his hand. So something like that. Um, I was willing to keep going, but like they just pulled the rug from under me. So I think yeah, there's all this stuff about DMT and psychedelics, and like we're all fractals of like this loving consciousness, and I don't agree with that because this consciousness has a sixth sense of humor. I don't see it as being in any way benign. And then I also think that there's a story or a trip report about this guy. He took DMT and he ended up as a kind of creature, a slave creature on an alien world. So I was just picturing like this kind of small little animal thing kind of crawling around on the ground as a slave for eternity. And like this was his trip report that I was reading, and I was thinking that that must be it, right? It seems so alien reading about it, which is really cool, right? But I then kind of thinking in relation to myself, I am that slave creature now. Um, and they talk about like multiple lives and all that kind of stuff. Like, and I don't believe in that, but I was just thinking if this was like the shell that I carry, like my soul is inhabiting this kind of version of me, or no, that's Arseways, but you know what I'm talking about. Like, if this was the kind of test of life, as it were, like that I had to confront deep fears and try and triumph and overcome them. I have completely failed. Completely failed. I am weak and stupid, and like it's like putting an animal out to pasture, putting them out of their misery. They're not it. They're a bad iteration. They're a worthless iteration of something of a better version. That there could be a better type of self more deserving to exist. And I feel like that is the verdict that has been passed on me, and it's my own verdict too. I am a resolute failure. I think that's also confirmed. I remember I made a video about life is hell, and I was saying, "Oh, my girlfriend dumped me," and she was right because I think she could see the writing on the wall that I'm a total loser and she can do better. Um, so there's that as well. So the message I'm getting from the universe, which is totally doesn't give a shit, is that I am completely worthless, and there's no purpose to my existence. I am that slave creature. Um, I'm just exist to be tormented, if that is a purpose, which I don't think it is, but that's it. Okay.